Hi, I'm Amanda Reeves, Operations Manager here at Hands Across the Water. In today's interview, I'm joined by Chrissy Dask, one of our coaches in the Run to Remember Challenge. And Chrissy is a passionate strength and conditioning coach and the owner of the Strength series. She's a mum of two, a pregnancy and postpartum coach, and she brings firsthand experience and a wealth of knowledge to the fitness industry. Watching Chrissy's journey into fitness and where she's brought it today, she'll share her insights and advice, tips and tricks, and a bit about her journey and her insights to support Peter in the Run to Remember. Thanks for listening. Welcome, Chrissy.
Thank you for having me, Amanda.
Absolute pleasure. Chrissy, I just want to start off our chat today. If you can share with me a bit about your fitness journey, how you got to where you are today of owning the Strength series and focusing on the areas of fitness that you are currently doing. But how did you get there? What were the steps? What's your background? What was your passion and drive to get to where you are?
So when I first started training, I actually didn't know a lot about strength training, which is crazy because I feel like now I know, like I'm no expert or anything, but like I know a lot about it and I'm like so in it every day. But I think I thought a lot of, like exercise and fitness and training was more cardio based stuff. And so when I started working with a coach and I started getting into strength training, I actually just really enjoyed it straight away. And I think it was just not knowing that there was that type of exercise that you could actually really enjoy. It didn't need to be something that you had to suffer through. It was just something that you could go in and just like feel really powerful with, or just like actually really enjoy. It didn't feel hard to me. It felt different and it felt challenging, but it didn't feel hard, which is really nice because then obviously you have a lot more motivation to get in and do your training. And that kind of inspired me to want to get more women into the weights room with the hope that they would enjoy it as much as I did. And so that's kind of how I, developed into being a coach myself and eventually getting into the point where I rebranded to Strength Series, which is the idea that you can train through all seasons of your life.
Absolutely. And it's such a journey and we'll share into why both of us can relate to that in a minute. And I think you touched on that, when you first start out at the gym and you go in and start to do weights, particularly as a woman, there was always that bit of a nervousness of stepping into that weight section. It was very male dominated and a bit intimidating, and having that platform to be a little bit more approachable and have a bit more confidence and stepping into that space.
Definitely. And I think that like even now, when you go to a new gym and you're using a new machine or you're using something that you don't know, you're like, is everyone looking at me? Like, am I doing this right? And I think that's what a lot of people feel like, and that can be like a real detraction from people getting started because like they don't want to look silly,
Absolutely.
So,
You're always in your own head about it, right? You're like looking around going like, oh, am I going to look like an idiot? Can I reach the bar? My thing's always the height. Can I reach the pull down bar? And you see me flailing around trying to reach it and just move on to the next thing.
I know. And it's so funny. Like everyone has their thing like that, and like we'll talk about it later, but like that's part of the reason why having a coach is so great, because they can help you with that sort of guidance and stuff like that.
Absolutely. And prior to going into the strength stuff, what was really your fitness go-tos? Where did you feel comfortable before going into that space?
I actually didn't really train very much. Like I was quite sporty growing up. I did a little bit of athletics, but I'm mainly involved in gymnastics and a bit of diving as well. And then when I didn't have structured sport, I kind of fell out of the fitness realm. And I think strength training really pulled me back in. So there was a period of time of like, 7 or 8 years between the ages of 16 and 24 where I just didn't do very much. And I think that if I had have known that strength training was going to be so enjoyable for me, I probably would have gotten into it a lot earlier, and actually probably would have been, able to be a lot stronger now than but what can you do?
I think your priorities always change in your late teens, early 20s, where you go a bit rogue and where you pull it back in is really interesting.
That's it. And I think a lot of people probably go through that period of time where it's like, you finish high school, you don't have structured sport anymore, and like, you're probably at this point, maybe you're going to uni or you've started working, and there's a lot of change in your life, and so there isn't a whole lot of I guess, self motivation to, seek out those things. And so, finding things that you really enjoy is important because they're the things that are going to get you in there at a sort of tricky time in your life.
Absolutely. And I think, you've got the benefit of your great metabolism in your 20s and it doesn't seem like a huge priority. And looking good is definitely from a different angle, not always from a fitness and a health aspect. It's that's where we kind of go off the rails. But, you talked about being a gymnast. Like, how seriously was that just your Saturday comps, or how seriously were you into gymnastics?
I was in it pretty deep, never to the point where there's like Olympics on the card or anything like that. But I was considered elite. And it was like it actually consumed quite a lot of my life. There was lots of training, but it's the same thing as what I'd say strength training is now. It does take up a lot of my time, but I look at it in a way where it was so enjoyable that it didn't seem like a chore or a job or anything like that. It was actually just something that I did. It was part of my identity. It was something that I really enjoyed.
Yeah. So I guess you really had coaches from quite a young age and saw the importance of that from, even from a little kid.
I did, yes. And like a gymnastics coach is like, they're pretty full on.
They're intense, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I guess the question is then, you did gymnastics, you did your kind of sports stuff. Then what was that moment that you went, I think I want to do this strength stuff? And what step did you take? Like, going to our audience and our people who are either looking to take that next step or starting out their journey, what was your pivotal moment and go, okay, I want to do this. How am I going to do it?
With a coach myself?
With starting training yourself
Oh,
and then
yeah,
finding
yeah.
a coach.
Yeah, so I think it was partly not really knowing what to do, and then partly what we talked about before, which was feeling a little bit like anxious or, like the gym was a bit unknown. But it was really just, I think I'm not getting myself in there. So like I'm not accountable to anyone right now. I'm not doing it myself. I probably need a little bit of a push there. And because I don't have that structure, with the things to do in there, if I am even getting in there, I'm just mucking around and I don't know if what I'm doing is actually achieving anything, Sometimes It's just like, blowing sand in the water kind of thing. Like, am I doing anything with what I'm doing, or is this just nothing? Am I pushing too hard? Am I not pushing enough? Like, there's all these questions. And then you're like, oh, well, if I'm not even doing anything, why should I even go? And then it's like a flow-on effect,
Exactly. And if you can share a little bit about, you then stepped into from doing some strength stuff to really going into some heavy powerlifting competitions and that sort of space. What was your inspiration and leap to that next step there?
So I think at that point, I had a couple of years of strength training under my belt, and it was almost like a really obvious next step for me. I knew a few people in the powerlifting space. I really enjoyed doing squats, bench, and deadlift, which is what powerlifting is. And that was also when I met my now husband through another friend. And he was actually the one who said to me that I should do a powerlifting competition. And I started working with him to then achieve that. So I think part of it was seeing him, in that space and what people could do. And that was when females were really starting to get a little bit more involved in powerlifting. That was like, 2016 or 2017 or something, and it was still a very male dominated sport. And so I think that was part of it too. It was, trying to pave that path for some of my clients, be a good role model for them. But also just to kind of challenge myself and do something that was a little bit harder than just, your habitual training.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned having contacts and friends and clients. How important is community when you are in that fitness space? And how does that come from a motivation, inspiration level? And what would you say to someone who is looking to join a gym or find a coach? How do you build that community?
It can be, I think, fitness, people who also train, you kind of just develop a connection with those people because you have those same underlying needs, thoughts, desires about, moving your body in a specific way. And I don't think it really matters if it's strength training or if it's running or if it's Pilates or if it's, you know, a fitness class or something. It's just kind of like this like innate desire to do something to move your body because you know that it makes you feel better. So I think when you see people training in the gym, even if they're doing some different modality of exercise, you kind of get it. You're like, oh yeah, like even though I might not necessarily want to be on the stepper for 20 minutes,
Yeah.
I get why someone would want to do that because they're sweating it out. They're kind of like in their zone. So I think there's that connection with people who are training, even if it's in a different modality anyway. But then when you do have that community support, and that's something that I definitely experienced in powerlifting, it's like it almost just pushes you on so much more. You know, you're like, they're not relying on me, but they're there to support me. And now I just feel like I've got a little bit of an extra push to keep going because I do have that community behind me.
Yeah, I think that's the important thing of having someone in your corner cheering you on, right? It's just having that energy and that support of going, I can do this, and people believe in me, and there's that aspect of that support, I think, is probably the
Absolutely. Just
key
like
part.
not feeling isolated in that
Uh,
endeavor for sure.
yeah. And I think that's really pivotal in why we're running these coaching boxes in this virtual challenge is to support Peter Baines, our founder of Hands Across the Water. So he's running 1,400 kilometers in 26 days through Thailand's humidity and heat. And I'm sure he won't mind me saying he's no spring chicken. And he is absolutely pushing himself to do this phenomenal challenge. And it's all to support the kids of Hands. And we've got a really ambitious goal of raising $1 million. We've got some great goals and strategies in place for the next 3 to 5 years of things that we want to achieve to provide those kids a life of choice and some brighter futures. And having everybody here in Australia cheering him on and participating in this challenge and building that community behind him to support him, I think that's really, really pivotal from what we can do to support him, and having these sessions that he will also listen to while he's running through Thailand, and hearing that inspiration to keep him going, I think is everything that we can offer right now. And so I think that community piece is really important.
Absolutely. I think what Peter is doing is amazing. I applaud anyone who undertakes such a physical challenge, particularly to help others, you know, not just for his own personal gain, you know, it's to help others. And I think that you would probably understand this because you're a parent as well, but like being a mum's definitely made me more emotional and more understanding of the things that people do for their children. So, you know, I understand the physicality side of what Peter's doing as well and how challenging on the body and mind it will be. And, you know, there's a lot of mental resilience that's going to be required on his behalf. But I think for the cause, and, you know, parents around the world will understand, you know, why he's
Absolutely.
doing what he's doing.
Yeah, and I think that's the really thing that resonated with me. I was in Thailand with my family earlier this year, and my son playing with the kids of Hands in one of our homes, and seeing all the choices and opportunities that he has and how privileged we are just inspired me. Like, what else can we do to give these kids the options or choices in their life that our kids have a fraction of?
Absolutely.
And what else can we do? But you touched on the mental hurdles and the physical challenges of it. Through your training in the powerlifting, I'm sure you would have hit those walls mentally and physically. And what sort of tools and tactics and advice have you sort of received or been given that helped you overcome those sort of things?
I think having people in, you know, whether it's friends or people who are part of your team of some kind, people to support you. I think that's the most important thing. And that might not look like, you know, the normal thing might not be your husband or your wife, or, you know, it might be other people who are on the same journey of running. It might be like, you know, part of your run club, or it might be your physio who's helping you out with some of your, you know, physical injuries. I think, you know, if you're getting to the point where you are wanting to quit, or, you know, things are just feeling really challenging, those people are there to sort of pull you back in and remind you why you're doing it. And so I think that, you know, the support doesn't come in ways that always look really clear to people, but having some sort of a team is going to be, yeah, the most important thing.
Yeah, for sure. Because I'm sure many a blisters and a sweaty step is going to be challenging, and he's prepared physically. He's trained his is best and feels ready to go. But yeah, it'll be those mental hurdles that he gets through that really will rely on the rest of us to be able to support in many different ways.
Definitely.
And you touched on the fact that you met your husband through training and through being a coach.
Hmm.
And I love that aspect. And us at Hands can also align to those. I met my husband at the gym too. And our founder and CEO, Claire Baines, is also married to Pete. She'll be joining him on the run. She'll be also partaking in the run and the challenge, and supporting him in every single way she can. How has it been in your personal experience to work with your husband, to be coached by your husband, to now raise a family and have so many layers to your relationship and not kill each other?
Tough. It's been tough.
Yeah.
I think Alex and I we eventually sort of separated coaching and personal because we did find it. It wasn't that it was bad. It was just that I think we were just seeing too much of each other.
Yeah.
So I think in Peter and Claire's instance, she'll be able to relate to a lot of what he's going through on that run, but she'll also be able to understand him from all different aspects, as an athlete, but also as a husband, and all of those things. So I think she'll probably be able to support him best because she'll know what he needs maybe before he even does, when you do have that close relationship with your partner. Alex might come home and be talking about his powerlifting prep, and how he's, got some, soreness or, this and that, or, he's feeling really tired because he's peaking for his powerlifting comp or whatever it is. And I can relate to that because I've been in that circumstance before. So I think that, Claire will probably be able to help Peter in that way. And I think that's, it's a nice thing to have in your personal relationship, is to be understanding of each other's goals and even just the day-to-day of what, training for something big does entail.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. I think, when you're in sync with each other like that, you can hopefully preempt a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
And we sort of touched on, but I wanted to highlight you have two beautiful children now, Summer and Milo.
Yeah.
And, training now as a mum is just finding the time, I think, is the hardest thing for me right now. Is, we're working full time. We're working out, we're raising our kids, and the mental load that comes with all of that too. And like, are we doing enough? But you then moved into your training and coaching into pregnancy and postpartum. Was that from a personal aspect that inspired you, that was something missing in the market or something that you wanted to share?
It was a little bit of both, actually. So I started doing my certification when I was pregnant with Summer, but it was actually one of my long-term clients who inspired me to start the course because she had gotten pregnant with her first baby. And I looked into it a little bit more, and I looked at basically just like the stats. And 80% of women in Australia will be pregnant at some time. And if we think about how many women train, whether it's any kind of training, 80% is a lot. That's a lot of women. And if there aren't people who know how to train a female athlete through pregnancy, they're just going to be having to do it on their own. The doctors, they don't know, they can't give guidance. They've got their own stuff that they need to be focusing on. So we need more people in this space who can guide women, particularly women who are feeling unsure or unsupported through pregnancy. And I love being a pregnancy and postpartum coach because I am actually able to be an additional support system for a woman through pregnancy. So I learned a lot from my own pregnancies and what training through pregnancy is like, but it was mainly to be like, okay, there's a gap in this market, I guess, and I want to be able to fill that, and I want to be able to show women that they can train through pregnancy, they can be strong, they can retain muscle, they can be resilient through pregnancy, their bodies are strong, and we want to be able to sort of support them the whole way through and into postpartum as well.
Absolutely. And I think that's the thing. There's a lot of fear when it comes to fitness and pregnancy, right? You see all this stuff you hear from your doctor, you hear from all the myths out there, particularly through social media and the feedback that fitness women do get when they're working out, of what's safe, what's unsafe. Should you not be? And the importance of staying strong through your pregnancy has so many benefits. I remember my recovery was so much better because of the strength that I build in targeting particular areas. But how do you break through that fear factor and the messaging out there?
That's probably the toughest part. I think steering away from social media is the best thing, because the thing is that if you don't do anything, you sit on your bum through your whole pregnancy, you're going to be judged. You train through your whole pregnancy, you're going to be judged. You're going to be judged either way. So you might as well do what feels right for you and what is going to be best for your physical and mental health, right? It helps if, you know, the client has already been working with me and they become pregnant whilst working with me, because they know that I'm now, you know, skilled and experienced in that area. But it is a hard barrier to break through. And I think you just have to kind of, I guess, tell people that, you know, there are certain things that they're going to be able to do. Training through pregnancy is going to be a really individual experience. It's going to have to be, hey, let's work together and, you know, pretty much day by day, week on week, let's figure out, you know, how your body's responding to everything that we're doing. Is it going well? Is it not going well? What factors are we going to have to manage? You know, is there nausea involved? Do you have pelvic pain, back pain, all of that sort of thing? Let's find a support system for you, your partner, your doctor or midwife, me, your physio, all of those things, and just have a nice sort of support system through the whole pregnancy, and communicate, you know, frequently, so that we can figure out what's happening, you know, day by day, week by week. And when you do have that communication and that support, you kind of steer away from other, you know, things like social media there is so much uncertainty about what to do, and you're just like, okay, I now trust my support system. This is who I'm going to look to when I'm training through my pregnancy.
Yeah, and I think that's, as soon as I feel like the moment you find out you're pregnant, the judgment starts and the second guessing of yourself starts. And it doesn't end when you've had that baby. And then you go like, am I feeding them all right? Am I doing toilet training right? Are they sleeping right? There's so many things that are constantly going to be thrown at you. And having that coach to take you through that process, pregnancy and postpartum, gives you that little bit of confidence to say, I'm doing the right thing, or I know what I'm doing is really targeting my personal concerns or my personal journey. And I think that's really important when we're talking about fitness and looking at that from a holistic perspective.
Definitely.
And you touch on the physios and pelvic floor specialists and your OBs, and all of those people play a part into that holistic aspect of fitness.
Absolutely.
And one of your social posts recently that I just loved was of you running on the treadmill recently. And you were like, it's not good. My style is not great. My technique's not great, but I'm doing it for my kids. And having a runner myself as a 4-year-old, you definitely need to be able to sprint when it's required.
Absolutely. I'm not like, I'm like that person on the treadmill, you know, when you hear like a douche, 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 that's me on the treadie. I'm not good, and it's fine. Like, I'm okay with it, you know?
Yeah.
But I like that. I like the aspect of, I like running, like, you know, not all the time, but sometimes.
Yeah.
Because of exactly what you said. Like, I've got a toddler, and also just being able to keep up with your kids and feel physically fit and strong and healthy is like, you can't compare that to anything, you know? I just been able to do that and feel like you're not, you know, out of breath or struggling to pick them up, I think is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, as long as your drive and motivation is there, the rest will follow. And I think that, my son's just discovered tag or tip. And so that's been a big factor in. And all of a sudden, like, okay, we're at that next stage of life where it's now not just chasing him down the street or in a shopping center. It's that interactive play and those sports activities. And I think when he hit probably 2 is when I turned to live permanently in runners and trainers, and backpacks
Yeah.
or cross shoulder bags rather than handbags, because you're constantly on the run. But looking at that video and breaking down those barriers of going, just get in and do it and give it a go. It doesn't have to be great. But
Definitely.
what are your tips to someone who is either postpartum or wants to get into fitness and has decided, I'm going to give running a go? How do you start? How do you bridge that beginning pieces?
So I think people often go into it, any kind of training, but running's definitely one of them, where they go into it one of two ways. Usually two ways at the same time. They go in trying to do too much and without any structure. And it's like, if you haven't run before, I know it seems simple because it's something that your body can do, but it's not just as simple as, oh, out I go and off I go. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because there has to
From
be
couch to 5Ks is a big hurdle, right?
definitely, that's it. And that's why those programs were invented, because I think they were trying to bridge that gap between, like, this is, you've gone from doing nothing, let's get you doing something, and here's like an 8-week program to get you into it. So I think that the structure side of things is obviously really important, because you then going to be progressively overloading, and that's really important for your body to then adapt to what you're doing, particularly with something like running, which is obviously quite high impact. And that's something that a coach can help with as well. They can provide structure whilst doing what's called the minimum effective dose, which is basically doing the least amount of stuff to get the best results. And it's like,
so that's right up my alley. That's like totally targeted to me. How can I do the minimal in the minimal time that I have to be most effective?
That's it. But, why would you do more if you don't have to? Do you know what I mean? That makes sense, right?
Yeah.
And, that way you can also, the less you do, the more you're able to balance it with your daily life. And if you're a parent, like, that's a big thing, because the less time you need to invest in it, the better, because then you have more time to, work your job, spend time with your kids, all of those things. And also then you're looking at avoiding injury risk as well. And, most importantly, getting results. That's what you're there for. And then they can also help motivate and keep them accountable too, which is obviously really important. So I think just making sure that, like, if you are getting into it, you're not going hell for leather straight away. You're following some sort of program that allows you to overload, whether you're using a coach or not, and having some sort of structure to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think particularly as you're coming postpartum, you're so sleep deprived. And your mental health is really in a challenging place to have that focus on doing what you can rather than setting those goals too extreme for you, and then getting to a point where you then start to challenge yourself and take things to the next step.
Yeah. And anyone who's been postpartum probably knows, like, at the start, when you've just given birth, like literally like a couple of days after you've given birth, you're like, I will never be the same. You're like, nothing is ever I'm never gonna run again, and you feel like that. You're like, oh no, like this is a big change. And I think postpartum women are actually, they're probably the most well-versed people in what progressive overload is, even if they don't know it, even if they don't go to the gym, because you do a little bit more every day. The first thing is, a week after you give birth, you walk up to the coffee shop, which is a few hundred meters away, and then you walk a little bit more, and you walk a little bit more, and then you add a little bit of strength training, maybe do a little bit of Pilates, and that's what it is. You're just adding things in and adding a little bit more intensity and a little bit more time and frequency over time. That's what everyone needs to do when they start something new. But when you're postpartum, you have your body physically, I guess, stopping you from doing that. Whereas when, you're just starting something new, you don't. So it's an important thing to still implement, even if you, are not postpartum.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the thing, even if you're not getting onto that fitness journey and starting somewhere, or just stepping it up if you're already in it, and constantly having that challenging piece. And I think that's why this virtual challenge that we've created is to join Pete on his physical challenge, but to bring us as a community together to challenge ourselves. What advice would you give to people, and why should they join this challenge? And what does the coaches boxes mean to participants who receive this access?
So I think for those just wanting to push themselves, having what we talked about before and having friends or a team of supporters, I think is going to be the most important thing, because they'll need that support for, something that is outside of their comfort zone. Having a structured training regime that has, peak phases and recovery phases. And I think the biggest thing would probably be what I call, like, don't major in the minors, don't worry about those tiny little things like supplements and stuff like that. Make sure you're focusing on the big rocks of recovery, which is lots of sleep, lots of food, and relaxation techniques, whether that be, getting a massage or having a nice bath or watching trashy TV or whatever it is that helps you relax. Those tactics are really, really helpful to recovery. And then, of course, having a physio on hand if something doesn't feel right as well. So a lot of that is support, and then a lot of that is just sort of your own self-care, I guess. But it's important.
Yeah, listening to your body, right? Whether it's injury, whether it's not feeling good and going, I'm not sure what's happening, but getting that attention when those first niggles start and not letting it get too big, and then having that mental hurdle of going, I don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah, well, that's it. Yeah, you don't want to get to that point. And I think when people are actually pretty good at being in tune with their bodies and listening to their bodies, it is a kind of a vague statement, but I think if people do look in, sometimes it's very easy to brush things off. But when you are undertaking something really physical like that, you do have to see, what is my body telling me that it needs right now? Yeah,
absolutely. And so what tips or tricks can I leave from you to Pete in this challenge for himself? What's your overall message to him?
Oh, this is tough because I think he's probably going to be better at this than I am. But honestly, just when things feel hard, remember that we do hard things because it's important to get out of our comfort zones. And I think we get a lot of satisfaction from doing things that push us outside of that comfort zone, knowing that he's doing it for such a great cause as well. But I think he's going to feel so much mental satisfaction from such a physical challenge.
Absolutely. And so Pete's run starts on the 1st of December in Thailand. We can get behind him in many ways. We can donate to his $1 million target. We can sponsor one of his kilometers for $50. And you go into the draw to win one of two $5,000 cash prizes, which is pretty awesome. And I'm sure very welcome at the end of this year, which has been very tough for a lot of people financially. But encouraging people to join this challenge, fundraise, share your story with people, and bring awareness to the huge milestone of the 20th anniversary of the Boxing Day tsunami and the future of the children of hands. But for you, Chrissy, how can people reach you? Do you have coaching spots available? Is it in the strength space, pregnancy, postpartum? How do we reach you?
Yeah, so I do have coaching spots available at the moment. So for strength or powerlifting or pregnancy and postpartum, and I can be reached at strengthseries.com.au or on my Instagram, which is Chrissy Dask.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time today. We'll definitely share your links in the podcast that goes out. Really appreciate your time and sharing your journey with me.
Thanks so much for having me, Amanda, and go Peter.
Yeah, thanks so much. Bye.